Hi, welcome. Welcome to Recovering Our Wholeness Together with Lynn and Andrea. And I'm Lynn.
And I'm Andrea, and we believe that we're all recovering from something.
I'm in recovery from alcohol use disorder, lack mentality, anxiety, probably lots of other things. My pronouns are she, her. I live in the unceded territory of the Bay Miwok, which is the San Francisco East Bay area. And Andrea, where are you coming in from?
Thanks, Lynn. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in Philadelphia, which is the traditional land of the Lenape people, and I'm in recovery from alcohol, disordered eating, anxiety, grief, loss, lots of other things too.
Awesome. And today we have Maggie Nazario with us, which we are really excited to speak with her, speak with you. I'm going to read her really quick bio. She is a sustainable energy practitioner that supports clients through somatic and intuitively guided sessions. It's her heartfelt passion to help others support themselves on their personal and spiritual growth journeys. And I loved that, Maggie. Thank you for that intro. Um, Tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice and like what's a guided intuitive?
Thank you so much, both of you, for having me. And my pronouns are she, her as well. And I'm coming from the East Bay area. Yes, guided intuitive came to me after about 6 years of self-healing work. I just a little background. I would say it was, and I say this a lot, it was a time in my life where I'd say the worst, best thing that happened to me. My life completely fell apart. Everything fell apart from work to personal life, relationships, everything. And I had to sit with all this stuff and actually spend time with it on the ground and pick everything up and look at what I could put back together and what needed to be released. And during that time, I started to feel a bit of communication, and I couldn't name it at first. I did grow up in a very religious home, and so growing up and having that, I would say, um, to your points about recovery, I'm not quite sure how to word it, but recovering from religion, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a thing for
Yes,
sure.
yes. So I shut that anything that seemed like a voice beyond myself for many, many years. And so that was the first time in my mid 30s where I started to trust that, because it ended up being me that I was talking to. And so the reason I uh, was inspired to use guided intuitive is because I started to feel that guidance, and it was intuitive, and it was a trust that I had not had for years and years again, years again. And it was me, but it was also what I now call spirit and those looking over me, um, my ancestors, the hummingbirds, a plant, the ocean, the sun, all those things to me are guiding me. And so that's where I came up with that term.
That's beautiful. So kind of like your higher self, is that an
Yeah,
appropriate label?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. Me with my team.
Yeah, you with your team. Got
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Right. So tell me, so you call yourself a sustainable energy practitioner. And one of the reasons that I wanted to interview you is because you and I both are Reiki practitioners, right? So we've taken courses and we're engaged in Reiki, but both of us have started using other labels to describe energy work. You're using sustainable energy practitioner. I'm using restorative energy practitioner. And so I thought it would be great to have this conversation because I feel like Reiki can be a sticky word. And I'm wondering like what was the inspiration behind you changing, from Reiki practitioner to sustainable energy practitioner?
This is great. I'm really excited to talk about this. Excuse me. So kind of back to now you're getting the wheels turning. With Reiki, it'll be almost 10 years that I was certified Reiki level 1. And I will say, like, just foundationally, I am so appreciative of the fact that I discovered it, because it was through my own self-healing that that happened. Over the years, and I did do Reiki level 2. I kind of found myself depending on it in a way where it kind of became about the rules again, I guess, like religion a little bit. And I'm a rule breaker by nature. And I also wanted to remember myself. And so I noticed that mediumship was starting to come into my Reiki practice. And fundamentally, I'd learned that that's not really what you do. You go in, you have a session, you leave the client with the session. You don't really share much. But people were coming to me for the combination of like Reiki and a mediumship reading. And I was and even claiming that word medium has taken me many, many years to come to say that confidently and owning that. And so I I started to think about the ways that I naturally and strongly support people. And it that word, actually, I will say my friend Nancy uh, was the first one who came up with that word sustainable, because I kept using it, just not even thinking about it. And the
Sure.
reason I use sustainable energy practitioner is because it is my probably one of my top priorities to make sure that there is sustainability within the work that I do with clients. So, for example, I had my own Reiki session one time, and at the end of the session, she said, "Your third eye is blocked." Bye. Like, it was, she didn't say what that meant. She didn't say, I mean, she knew I was a Reiki practitioner. So I'm wondering if that was the case. But I found that, and you know what, I'm guilty of doing the same thing. When I first started practicing more like in person sessions, I talked to my friend about his solar plexus. And poor guy, like, I told him, I'll send you some info. And next day I call him and he's just a mess, because he looked it up and he had no support to follow up. And so, what I started to do was, with the sustainability phrase, is just make sure that whatever we worked on, they could work on their own time as well, and have those tools. And so, yes, you can come to me. Yes, we can chat, but I also want you to start to trust yourself with what comes to you, because they're the reasons, right? Our clients are the reasons that these things are coming up. And so sustainability to me means not putting a band-aid on something. It means let's work with this, because it is going to be continuous work on some level. Um, just like I would believe recovery would be, it's not a one and done thing. So that's where that phrase came from. And I feel very comfortable with it. It did, I would say it took a couple of, again, like bouncing things off, but this sits well with me. I feel like it just really suits the work I do.
Yeah, I love the hearing about the evolution of your identity as a professional, but also as a person. For those people that may not know, could you explain what a medium means to you and what a session with you would look like?
Yes, thank you. So for me, the reason that medium can, and I had been told that by a couple of people, you're a medium. I'm like, no, I'm just the middle person. I'm just literally the medium, but using the word middle person. And so for me, being a medium means that I am a helpful sort of channel to connect people with their inner knowing, with it's something, it's weird to me to say it. It might sound counterintuitive, but it's like something beyond yourself that is yourself, if that makes sense. And so for me, mediumship is trusting what that guidance into, kind of back to that term, guided intuitive, when that guidance comes in, that I can communicate that with the person that I'm working with, or with a loved one, with an animal, with a plant. And so literally the middle person between that space of spirit, God, uh, again, just what doesn't really come to you at the forefront. I'm that connector person.
Yeah.
So when you're saying like intuitive, I
Mhm.
know like Andrea and I both often get like sort of like visual hits, like intuition, and it's like an image might come to us. Is that how it comes to you? Or do you like, I mean, there's a whole like there's clairaudience, clairvoyance, there's all of the clairs. Like which one do you mostly align with, or is it all of them?
It's a couple of things that I am strongly clairaudient, but I kind of chosen to let that stay a little muted, just because it doesn't it can be a little unsettling.
Yeah.
So I've asked kind of, and that's one thing I want to really express to people is like, if something doesn't work for you, you don't have to go with that. It doesn't mean, and so I have just
Ah,
learned to kind of say polite, like ask politely. This doesn't really sit well to hear things very acutely. And it'll be like words mostly, but it'll sound like somebody's whispering right there. So that hasn't happened in a while, but does happen once in a while. And it's usually my name, actually. I'll hear Maggie. And then I'm
well,
like, talk to me some other way, please.
good for
But
you. Good for
yeah, yeah.
self-advocating to spirit. I love that.
Please let's just work this out another way. But so most for me, visuals come up, phrases, little phrases will come up. But mostly, yes, colors. I'll get a picture if I'm doing a reading with somebody who's asking about like their pet or passed on loved one. Most of the time, I will get some sort of visual, it's almost like a flash of, like movies where they show flashbacks of, I
Yeah.
don't know, somebody's running on the beach or something. That's kind of what comes to me. Yes, and animals in particular will it's almost like they're chit-chatting with me. Tell them this, tell them that. So that's I would say I am very fond of working with animals. Definitely one of the like highlights of the work I do.
So is a person, if I were to come to you in person for a
Mhm.
session, is the person sitting in front of you and having a conversation with you, or is it like a Reiki treatment where you're using some type of hands-on healing?
Thank you. That's a good question. So I started doing um, I say 90% of these readings are actually remote. Especially during the pandemic was when things started to pick up because people had time and they wanted extra support. But in person, most people will ask for a combination of both. If they want to see me, most people want to see me in person because they would like to do body energy work. And so they might say, and I do love this part of most people who know me and the work I do, they will say, I want to build my you know, trust in making more clear decisions around this situation. Can you help me? Or I'm grieving this. Can you help me address this? I need to the last person I saw in person, I've seen her for 6 years and her thing she just goes to now she just goes to her own little world and I'll be like, oh, how do you feel? And she's like, oh, I was floating in the ocean and it felt so nice. And so most people who see me in person do want that combination and they'll ask for feedback. I make sure it's always with permission. But if they
Yeah.
like feedback or we focus on something, they'll, I say, would you like feedback? And then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Nice. So what is your background in Reiki training? Like, is it the Usui? Is it Holy Fire? Is it a different lineage? Where can you talk about lineage? Because I wanna take this. That's part of the reason that I use a different name. So I want to talk about this because I think all three of us may have just slightly different Reiki training.
Yes, mine is Yusui, and um, it's okay for me to share a little
Yeah.
where mediumship came in as
Yeah.
well. Was when I had this training, which in person. His name was Matthew, and so what I did appreciate about the in-person training was uh, Matthew would tell me it was over a course of a few days, but he would teach me through storytelling. And so the first person I learned about was the trainer of his teacher. And then, then we went to his teacher and then to him. And I actually channeled his teacher the night before he taught me. The night before, I was at the store and I'm like, I want chocolate cake and I want a glass of champagne. And it's just so random. I like champagne, but I don't, it's not something I really like. So I got it. I got in bed and I had a piece of cake in my little glass. And I get the next day I say, oh yeah, it was, it was weird. And he said that was her favorite thing. The combination of the two things was her favorite thing to have as a treat. And she was like very specific about that. And so that was just like a little funny thing that happened. But yes, I had Usui training. Now I will be honest and say my memory around this because it was a while ago isn't that great. But I had also an attunement in person, which was lovely. That was I really did like that experience of being taught as well. So um, just having that space to learn from somebody sharing, you know, was really special.
Do you know the who like the lineage, were they more of like, so there's all of these different lineages. So for people who don't know, I'm gonna give a little brief background. So Mikao Usui is considered like the father, the founder of Reiki, right? He coined the term and started teaching it about 100 years ago. But Reiki energy has existed since millennia. He didn't invent Reiki energy, right? He invented the practice, right? So then there was, then he taught, I won't go through the whole lineage, a variety of people. And then it became like this, like it streams down and all of the different teachers have their own streams. And so now in the US, and we're all in the US, most of Reiki teaching is considered more Western, like it's been Westernized. There have been other elements that have been added into it, like there's some Christian aspects. So my training, I didn't know when I started, I was like, Reiki is Reiki. And I just went to the local person who was teaching in Danville, California, and it happened to be the Holy Fire lineage. I had great training. I love my teachers. It was fabulous, great experience. But I didn't even know like there's a whole bunch of different types of Reiki out there. Um, and so one of the reasons that I wanted to have this conversation with you both today is so you're both Usui trained, which is considered the more traditional Japanese form. Um, and there's kind of like stuff that's bubbling up across all of the traditions right now of, is Reiki really Reiki if you're not practicing the form that's the Japanese traditional Usui taught. So is Holy Fire, is Shambhala, Mary Magdalene Reiki, Kaliki Reiki, like there's all of these other forms that use that word Reiki, but they add in different components. They teach about chakras, they teach about, different things that would not be part of the Japanese teaching. And so for me, I needed to start using restorative energy practitioner because I feel like I need to respect the Japanese tradition. Like and I do plan to go back and actually take some formal classes in like the traditional Usui. Probably it would be the Jikiden, Jikiden lineage in order to learn as close as possible to what Usui would have taught. So that's like where I'm at. And so I wondered if that was at all a part of your decision to use the sustainable energy practitioner, but it sounds like maybe that isn't the reason for you.
Yeah, I hear you. And, even you mentioning, I didn't know about the different types until as of a few years ago. Um, I, I just, I just rolled with what I had learned, but then the part of the reason I released that term Reiki practitioner was because I wasn't following the traditional methods that I was taught. And I felt like I was not representing what traditional Reiki was. I honor it. I would never say, no, there's no Reiki involved at all in what I do. But it was, yes, even the hand positions, I don't use all of them. And I've actually made up a few of my own. I do use the chakras to work with people a lot. And so even you mentioning, that part, it kind of slipped my mind, and it just kind of did start to evolve into something that was beyond traditional Reiki. Yeah.
Right, because the chakras are like from the Eastern, like the yogic tradition,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so it wouldn't be Japanese. Do you use like here, I think I have them somewhere. Yeah. Like, do you use these kinds of symbols in your practice, or do you make your own? Like I have started using my own symbols. I will use these from time to time, but I actually came up with my own symbols that work for me. So is that part of your practice too?
When I do distant Reiki, I'll use those symbols. But during an in-person session, I have also come up with it's like a three-part thank you. And it's just something that came to me naturally. So, uh, yeah, no, I don't. And I think that's really cool that you've come up with symbols that's the part that I guess, when we're talking about this, that's the part where I found myself wanting to really set term because I really do love the teaching parts. And I also love then teaching yourself and having it become something that meshes with your gifts and who you are, because I think it just makes it, because to your point, there is plenty of Reiki practitioners in the world. There's lots of people doing energy work, but what makes each of us unique is our uniqueness to the gifts that we have, and so I always wanted to embrace that, while also honoring what I've learned from Reiki. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing about that. I feel like, what we're talking about obviously is honoring the history and the tradition, but also language. Um,
mhm.
and for me, Lynn and I, because of the work we do, we had to spend a lot of time in school, working on our degrees and licenses and credentials. And so calling myself a Reiki master never felt comfortable because the schooling that I received in order to become a counselor was a master's degree, and that did take a long time. And I do think that people spend their entire lives devoted to these practices, but I think that language is really important. So I think hearing both of your perspectives on how you self-identify is really helpful for me. And I think that in a lot of ways, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about healing work, right? And it, just like Lynn said, Reiki existed before Usui came up with a method. Um, and even when he was developing the method, things were not written down, right? So how can we even know exactly what that looked like for his students? And so I think it's really important to look at um, how we can um, talk about and find common ground for things that we're the work that we're doing is healing work, and like you said, the most important thing is to support the client. And I think that you've developed a really unique way of sharing your gifts with your clients.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And that's something that's important to me too, is, for example, I'm interested in doing work within the realm of trauma, but I'm studying it right now. And so I think it's very important for us to be responsible with our clients. I've had clients have come in who clearly um, could use extra support, like via therapy or counseling. But I can tell they're turning their energy to me to replace that, or maybe not quite aware. And so I'm very careful about, I do love the combination of therapy, counseling, and energy work. I think it's important. We're humans. I find neuroscience fascinating. And so I think we have that responsibility to um, teach or continue to learn and also be aware of those I don't know if boundaries is the right word, but yeah, the boundaries within what we can do and then also what they need. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's knowing your scope of practice and your scope of competence, right? Like you know, I may have great counseling skills because I just happen to be, gifted in that way, but I'm not a licensed professional counselor. Andrea is, so I can't do that, right? That's the scope of practice. So yeah, definitely being respectful for making those referrals back to, like, ruling out medical and not just relying on Reiki or something like that if you're experiencing, medical problems or mental health problems, referring to a counselor. So I thank you for bringing that up. It's really important. Yeah. Um, you mentioned in your bio somatic work. So how do you bring that in?
So the term somatic to me, baseline, it means of the body, like body work. And so I'll give an example. I had a client last week who would wanted to release a kind of a psychic emotional connection she had with somebody in her past. And so for me, I always want to make sure clients are checking in with their body, because a lot of times we will either stay up here or we're not quite connecting the emotion to us holding it in our body. And so this is again why I'm so interested in trauma work. I just am getting through the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and learning about how our body can store things. And so with this particular client, we did a body scan. And so for doing a body scan with me is checking in from head to toe. And so, we get settled in and then we try to pinpoint where she feels that connection. And so we figured out where that was. And then we worked with that space, created a visual of her holding that and then releasing it. And so, uh, somatic work to me is, yes, checking with the body, seeing where that connection is to an emotion, a belief, even an affirmation, receiving an affirmation, and then working to either hold it, release it, recalibrate, So I wouldn't say it's definitely not medical. Some people will come to me and say, oh, my back was a little stiff. It feels better, but it's very light touch points because again, I'm very careful about somebody coming to me for that like particular to help with a medical condition. I can support the health of the body, but yeah, so yes, somatic work is mostly checking body check-ins. I would say on a simple term, body check-ins. Yeah, and I love it. Yeah, it's good. It's good, important work.
Ah,
Really feels like you're giving clients the tools to know themselves better, right? Because they're acting
Yes,
in their own body, and in their own spirit. And so you're, like you said, with sustainability, you're giving them the tools to use in between sessions. It's not just about you and the work that you do as a professional, but really empowering them to take care of themselves.
exactly. Yes, yes, and this work again, we all know this work isn't a one-time deal, and so that's something, with this person trying to release that connection, she didn't feel 100% great after. She said, I do feel lighter. I still kind of feel that connection. And so I'm going to check in with her in like a week. And, and then one of the things we had as her homework or action step was to revisit that body scan. And so that's why I like to do things with the client. It's the show me, versus just tell me, like, let's do this together. You get a feel for it, and now you can do it on your own.
Yeah, really hands-on. One question I like to ask is, how do you apply the Reiki precepts in your life? And maybe for you, it's no longer really thinking about the precepts individually, but how do you use that energy work, those tools yourself to help you get through difficult times?
So I will say there's this, it's on YouTube. it's like 7 minutes or something, and it's the Reiki principles. So I know I don't know it by heart, but it's, the just for today,
Mhm.
I worry, and so when I am, because I struggle with anxiety, definitely, it's definitely um, gotten better to manage over the years, but those principles make me feel very present, and so I will listen to that clip as I'm putting my makeup on, or because the bathroom is, where I have lots of these conversations with myself in the mirror, and so that, and then actually uh, I have a table at my house, and so I'll put that table out and I will work on my own body. Sometimes it's not self-touch, I'll just lay there and ask to receive. Maybe put some music on, and just feel that energy, feel that support, and be reminded, because I think this happens to a lot of us when we are in this field, is we forget to tend to ourselves the way we are tending to others. Or for myself, I will equate helping somebody else with that feeling of, you feel satiated, you're excited, you're like, wow, this is super cool that I could help you. And I'll make that feel like it was self-care for myself somehow. So just coming back to Reiki for simply solely helping myself, that reminder. And so, like right now, I mentioned I am going through a stressful time. I've put a bunch of money into my old car, and it's, I just had to realize recently, because unexpectedly it's not working again. And so I have to scramble, and, we all know car stuff is just so stressful. But I gotta be honest, I've even surprised myself in the way that I've been able to stay grounded, while acknowledging that I'm stressed, but also just kind of staying present, because I think that's really important. Is it's not avoidance, but it's just, this is where I'm at right now. Like right now, I'm sitting with you two, and I'm very present. Those things aren't going anywhere, and they'll be managed. And so I think Reiki and energy work. Has really helped with that sense of being here now.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, we have to prioritize our own healing work in order to have the capacity to help other people.
Mhm.
And sometimes we forget that and we need to be reminded. And that's a good way to come back to yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that story. Yeah, my Instagram is energy.applied because I want to make sure that, kind of like you with sustainability, that for me it's the word applied. Like, how do we apply it to
Mhm.
whatever's currently going on in our lives? And so I like that story about how you're digging in and remembering to do your self-care and keep yourself grounded and balanced, and that it's actually helped with your anxiety in a stressful time, so that it's actually applicable to, like, as a useful tool. So that's great. Um, One of the questions I like to ask everyone is, what most surprised you about Reiki? Like when you started, before you really knew, go back, 10 years and look back over time for this practice. What's been like a surprising gift that Reiki has brought in your life?
I think the mediumship, definitely. I this gift was very apparent when I was a child. A lot of things happen between probably ages of like between 6 and 9. I also had a sister that was very sick, and I was picking up on her sickness. So uh, I didn't, the term empath came through Reiki. I didn't know what an empath was until, I didn't even know that term until my 30s. I wish I had known it earlier. I'm so excited. My niece is an empath, and I'm able to like help her
Yeah.
embrace that part of herself and work with it. And so um, I think that was the most surprising thing, is to see how this came about and not be uh, silenced around it or scared of it either.
What would
Wonderful.
what would you say to someone who is new on their healing path, whether it's Reiki or other energy work? Not a professional
Mm.
who's pursuing that as a career, but an individual who is early in recovery or early in their healing path, what suggestions would you give to them?
The first word that's coming up really big is to play and follow your curiosity. Trust yourself because yes, it is so good to get guidance, support, but when it comes down to it, it's you. And so uh, play so that you can figure out what works for you. um, for me, sitting in the sun directly, if I get 30 seconds of that 4 or 5 times a week, it is my medicine. And so if you want to really make things look like you, be all about you. And so I would say play and trust are two, they're like in all caps in my head right now. And so I would say trust yourself and it doesn't have to be, we have, there's going to be darker times, there's going to be challenges, and so also find the joy and go back to you know childhood. What would the kid in you do? What did the kid in you like to do? So yeah, those are the two words that are coming to me very strongly right now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think even in my clinical work, not with coaching, but with counseling, a lot of women come to me with a variety of issues, not necessarily wanting to stop using substances or dealing with specific mental health issues, but just in general, I see a lot of women who really want to build trust in themselves. And that's a tricky one, right? Like, how do you build trust in yourself? But I think you have to be willing to explore, and
Yes.
sometimes that begins with figuring out, hey, okay, I'm a woman in my 40s. What do I like? Right? What do I
Mhm.
want? What do I need? And the more you do that, the more you're able to build that trust in yourself.
Absolutely, yes. And um it's good to play with the play can be curious. Like one of the most simple exercises I do with clients is just yes and no. Like when is a time that you said yes to something and it was just wow, that was really the best yes? How did that feel in your body? What did that look like? When is the time you said yes and it didn't work out? Just noticing those differences so that yeah, that trust becomes stronger and that communication with your gut feeling and your cues becomes more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It
Like you,
sounds like you had to push through some maybe like deconstruction of religious beliefs and stuff like that. So following up kind of on Andrea's question about like somebody who's new to this path, what if somebody is considering doing like alternative therapy, like Reiki and energy work for healing, but they're not sure if it's right for them, or they have family members that would say like this isn't like a good tool to use. Do you have any thoughts about that, or suggestions for people who are a little bit afraid to dip their toe in the water?
yes. I think something I would encourage them to ask is, can you hold both? If you believe, I have clients who come who are Christian or Catholic and so that reminder that you can believe in a certain type of God. And the beautiful thing about Reiki or this energy work is, to me, it's universal. So if that can be like a question you ask yourself, am I am I really stepping out of my religion, or am I adding to it? Am I am I combining something so that I feel more balanced, more well-rounded, and so I guess seeing it as, I would say, for example, my mother's come such a long way. I know she was just raising an eyebrow to Reiki when I first did it, but she over the years has seen how much joy it brings me. And also, we're all people of service. Every person in my family, we're all just, it's in our blood to be of service to others. So, again, I guess I would just come back to that. How can we, are you adding in versus like pushing something out? you know. So I think that would be more comforting to think about and hopefully make that person feel more comfortable exploring.
Thank you for sharing that. I like that answer. So, Andrea, did you have any questions? I have one last question that I was going to ask, but I want to make sure I'm not cutting you off at all.
No, I think I'm okay.
So tell us a little bit about stuff that if people wanted to connect with you, what you have going on locally, what you do in terms of distance, and we'll put links in the on the YouTube once I upload it. We'll put your links there, but how can they find you? And just if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they do that? And in what ways?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for holding that space for me to share. I would say I'm very uh, personable. I am on Instagram, Maggie Guided Intuitive. That's usually where I get most of my communication. I do have a website, but it's under construction right now as I kind of switch some wording. And I'm also on Facebook just as Maggie Nazario. And I do remote sessions. So, Zoom calls. Again, I work with animals. I do work with people and animals in transition. So I am intending to get my death doula certification, and I'm sharing that just because it's become a recent calling for me. And so uh, I would say I welcome follows on Instagram, a friend request, in person. I am in the East Bay area, kind of close to Oakland. I do every 6 weeks we have an event. I have a sound bath partner, and so we have events in Walnut Creek where we'll have a sound bath, and a small group of people will receive energy work from me individually while the sound bath is going on. We also do private parties, so if somebody had 5 friends and they wanted to work on self-trust, or a topic, we will curate that event to have that experience to touch on that. And so, yes, I would say, again, welcome connection. I'm really not salesy. I would prefer just to kind of get to know a newer person, see what their desires are around. If they're curious to work with me, we'll have a chat and go from there.
Would you mind saying just a little bit about your program as a death doula? That's something that's really of interest to me.
Yes, so I am looking for a school because again, I think I have the intuition to communicate with people and animals who are, for example, I worked with a family where the dad was in hospice and was able to kind of communicate uh, through mediumship. But I also want that education. And so I do have my birth doula certification. However, I've decided not to really pursue that unless it's friends or family. It is intense work. It's big work. It is. And so I honor my capacities to support, but with the death doula certification, I would like to get the background on supporting families as a whole, because it's not just about that one session that I would do. And I've done this actually more with animals where there's an animal in transition or the animal's already passed, and somebody's asking me to see if I can connect with them, and are there any messages around that? And so uh, I believe strongly having that combination of my gifts and then having a little bit of background education is super important to
Yeah.
me.
I'd love to talk with you more about that. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I really respect that you're going to go get more education and that you really, you definitely take it seriously. You want to have something that's well informed to offer people. It seems like you're very trauma informed. Really like how holistic you are and that you take your time with things. I mean, I could just it's very relaxing to talk to you. It feels very natural. You and I have known each other for at least a year, but we've never actually met face to face. And so, it feels though like I've talked to you forever. You're very easy. So I know if I was looking for someone, I would definitely reach out to you to work with. So it's been lovely having this conversation. Did you have any last thoughts or things to share or questions for us about our work? Anything that you wanted to add?
Um, I guess, and this could be a side question, but I'm just feeling,
Yeah.
so when it comes to recovery, what would you encourage me to do in terms of being the most optimal support if somebody was in recovery and came to me for energy work? If you had any advice or thoughts around that, I would totally, yeah, welcome it. So either of you.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think part of the work that I do is getting people connected with resources. So I think just having resources in mind, like She Recovers, which is for women and non-binary individuals, people who self-identify. And there's free meetings twice a day, right? There's so many resources that are available, but I think one of the things, especially if you're working with someone who's early in recovery, I think one of the things that people really need is community. And you're
Mhm.
providing that for them. You're providing a relationship, a professional relationship that's based on healing, but it's also based on trust. And you're helping them to learn to trust themselves in their own healing journey, but being able to help them get connected with community and having consistency. So, consistency in taking care of themselves. I think those are two good suggestions.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for me, um, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I met Andrea and how all this came about. But we also run, which you're in, the Energy and Healing Refuge for Women and Non-Binary Practitioners Facebook group. So you might, if it's somebody who happens to be female or non-binary, you can send them to our Facebook group because then we can help, provide resources that way too. But I met Andrea through She Recovers Foundation, and she was coaching, and I was co-hosting one of the free meetings that they have twice a day. And Andrea actually was talking about the fact that she taught, or not, I don't know, taught, was offering a Wednesday afternoon self Reiki practice just as a group over Zoom. And, whoever wanted to go to just connect with her. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that. I don't know what Reiki is, but it sounds good. And I like Andrea. So let's just like try it. And then, over a couple of sessions of meeting with her and her lovely mom, Nancy, who was there, like I just decided this was a really good recovery tool because it brought down my anxiety so much and it helped me center and ground myself and remember who I am so that I'm not looking for external things, whether that's spending or drinking or eating or any of the things that we don't want to do too much of. I'm not looking for them because I return to my wholeness, right? That's the whole recovering our wholeness together. So that was like, the little seed that was planted. So I think that, people can come to you for recovery work because that's exactly what you're teaching. You're already teaching them to go within, to relax, to reset, to move from the parasympathetic or to this from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system, which allows them to respond rather than to just react to stressors. So I think that you're already doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
So
course. Well, it's already like been what 44 minutes or something like that. It's this has been an absolutely lovely conversation and I'm super grateful to you, Maggie, for joining us and giving us your time that you donated here and we definitely hope for all of your success. So thank you so much.
thank you both so much. And I look forward to this coming out and just staying connected.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. This is such a great experience. So wonderful to meet you, Maggie. And thank you for the work that you do for people in their healing.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Andrea, do you want to close us with the Reiki precepts?
Sure, sure. So there's many different versions of the precepts, but this is the way I practice them. Just for today, I will not be angry. I will not worry. I will be grateful. I will be honest. And I will be kind to every living thing. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
You all.
You
Bye-bye.